Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I am filming a reading vlog, and by the title you know what I'm gonna do. But I've been wanting to do a reading vlog for a while now, but every time I start one it doesn't feel right. Like I'm not like totally committed to it. But I thought it'd be fun to try a very popular author that a lot of people have opinions on. And yeah, I've never read Stephen King before. I know he's not like just the horror author, but that's pretty much what he's known for. And I mentioned this in a book haul, my last book haul, that when it comes to authors with a huge backlog, I usually just start at the beginning. And I thought it would be fitting to just start at the beginning with Stephen King as well. For this video I have Carrie. This is the copy that I have. It was like $3 at my used bookstore, so that's what we're going with today. I'm pretty sure Carrie's like his first published novel, like in order, so I chose this one because I'm already familiar with like the story. It's not terribly long, like my copy's like less than 300 pages, so yeah, I think it'll be fun. And it's also October, so it's like fitting, I think. I have a few chores to do today, but before I do them, I think I'll just like read 50 pages and like see how I'm feeling, how I'm vibing with Carrie. Peace out. Hi, so it's about an hour later and I'm about 68 pages into Carrie. I'm gonna go have a snack and then maybe clean up the kitchen because it's a mess. But some of my initial thoughts are, I think it's a really good start. I think Stephen King really establishes these characters really well, especially Carrie and her mother. Like, I have a really good grasp on these people. Even like Sue, what's her name, Sue Snell. I was really surprised about the depth of her like monologue that she was given. She's not just like the popular girl, she's like really conscious of what her life looks like based on the person that she is now. I think that's really interesting. Stephen King's definitely not the first person to do this, but the way that men write women's bodies, especially young girls' bodies, is always like interesting to me. And it's not inherently like a bad thing to describe like the details of a girl's body, but it's definitely like why describe this part of her body, you know. I'm only 68 pages in, but I've seen Stephen King describe, you know, Carrie's, you know, she's like hunched over and her hair hides her face, which is like whatever, but then he'll describe like the color and I think the size of like her nipples, for example, and I'm like, okay, didn't know that, but thanks for sharing. And when the girl's gym teacher's introduced, the first thing he says about her is that she's slim, which is fine, but then describes her as like non-breasted, which I don't know like about y'all, but like when you introduce a character, whether it be like physically or like their demeanor or whatever, like the size of their breast is not really like the first thing that I think about. But yeah, I've read way more descriptive stuff in regards to women's bodies before, and Stephen King's definitely not the first one. I think one of the biggest bullies that Carrie has is Stephen King himself. Like, he rips into her. Like, it's pretty I would laugh if it wasn't so sad. Like, he calls her, she looks like the part of a sacrificial goat. Like, okay, like, let her have it. Oh my god. And then one thing that really like made me kind of sit back and think is the bathroom scene at the beginning of the book. So if you don't know, this is kind of a spoiler, but like the story's been around for like a hot second and like it's a really popular film. Carrie gets her menstrual cycle at the beginning of the book and she doesn't know what that is. She's like 16 or 17. She doesn't know the concept of her menstrual cycle. She doesn't know what it is, and she was never explained to it. And when people tried, she kind of thought they were joking, but she gets in, she freaks out, and all the girls start bullying her. And there's a line in here, I'm not sure if I can find it, but he basically talks about how one character's like, maybe it's like instinctual for women to be so like hostile in regards to their period or something, which, like, don't get me wrong, like, you know, you get very emotional and stuff, but I've never felt more solidarity in being a woman than when I'm in a woman's restroom, if that makes sense. Like, in high school, like my high school experience, there were countless times when girls I didn't even know or have never talked to, older than me or younger than me, would just be like, hey, do you have a sanitary product? And I'd be like, oh, 100% here, take it, I don't care. Or vice versa, like if I needed one, or if a girl came up to me and I was like, oh, sorry, I don't have anything, but like I will hunt down one for you, you know, and vice versa. Like girlhood all that kind of stuff like really comes together in girls' bathrooms. That's where you get the stereotype of like, why do girls go to the bathroom together? So we can like feel good, strangely enough. And I think it's funny that one of the first scenes that we get is like such a hostile setting, when I don't think of restrooms as like a hostile place. I don't know. Okay, here's the quote that I was talking about. Maybe there's some kind of instinct about menstruation that makes women want to snarl. I don't know. Carrie's also kind of violent. I always just thought of her as like a very passive figure because that's how she's been portrayed, but and I thought that the bullying kind of finally made her snap, but like even at the beginning I see her thinking about things about like wanting to hurt her classmates, and I don't remember seeing that in the film, but I think I would have liked to see. And also just a lot of shaming of like women's bodies, not from Stephen King, specifically religion, which this book is very heavy on religion, specifically like the really hardcore. I don't even know what to describe Carrie's mother as. Maybe like hardcore evangelical Christian, like women's bodies are inherently sinful because we tempt men and all that kind of crap. I also didn't know Carrie's name was Carrietta. I thought it was just Carrie, but the first page says that her daughter is named Carrietta. Also, this book has like excerpts from like journals and interviews and newspaper articles, which I really like because it really like builds a story, which you obviously don't get in the films because it's very much focused on Carrie, but you get people who talk about meeting Carrie and her mother, or you get journals that I'm assuming are written after the fact, like after the events of this book. I don't know, I like it. I love when like books have like journal entries and interviews, and I don't think this book has pictures, but sometimes pictures. I like that. Hi everyone, so it's currently like 8 p.m. the next evening and I'm on page 235. I have that little bit left, like I think the book's like 280 to like 290 pages, so I'm almost done. The big event at prom already happened. I would say if I hadn't already seen at least 2 of the adaptations, I'd probably say it was like really shocking, but since I already knew it was gonna happen, like I was like, yeah, this checks out. But it was still good to read. I enjoy the multiple perspectives in this. I thought this was just gonna be like focused on Carrie, but we do get like other teachers and classmates, and occasionally we get Carrie's mother's perspective, as weird as it is. So yeah, I do enjoy that. Sometimes we are given a perspective, sorry, that was my dog, but sometimes we are given a perspective that I don't care about. After the events at prom, while like the city's like burning down, we get some random drunk guy's perspective. I really don't care. He's just like, Carrie looks crazy. Yeah, she does. I bet she fucking does. Like the amount of times I get described Chris's boobs or Sue's boobs. I've also seen descriptions of like the coach's boobs, Carrie's boobs, even the mother's like body. It's like weird. Like, okay, I think it's been pretty noted like how themes of racism, excuse me, I think it's been like noted how we see racist themes pop up in Stephen King's books, and like in some moments, yeah, like he's creating a character and that character is bad and also racist, which fine, like a bad character is also racist, that's fine, but like some of the descriptions here are kind of fish. Like I don't mind if a character, that's gonna sound bad, but like a character being racist in the 70s, like yeah, okay, but also like for example when Carrie gets like blood on her, the pig's blood on her, he describes her like, he compares her looking like a blackface minstrel. Okay, that is certainly a choice that you could make and put down on paper, send it to your editor and have it published. Okay, go off. I should have like guessed that there was gonna be like an animal death. Obviously they need the pig's blood. I just assumed they just get it, but we read a scene where 2 boys or 2 or 3 teenage boys get the pig's blood. I just don't like animal deaths in books. It makes me very sad. But other than that, nothing else to add. I am enjoying the book, and I do think that a huge part of my enjoyment is the fact that while I'm reading, I'm like thinking of the film, the Sissy Spacek film, along with what I'm reading. I'll probably finish the book, maybe throw in a clip of me watching the film because I might as well watch it again, and then wrap up my thoughts in like a formal review, I guess. Peace out. So I finished Carrie. Let me talk about it. So as far as ranking goes, I definitely give it like a 4 out of 5 stars. The issues that I had, while are notable, I still really enjoyed my time reading this. The story is really relatable, and it's obviously at this point so iconic that you can't really like knock it as far as like this doesn't make sense or whatever. A girl gets bullied her whole life by her religious mother, her friends, her teachers, and then the one night where she can maybe have a good time, it's taken away from her, and she snaps and like punishes the people in her life. It's a pretty straightforward concept, and also there's a lot of like satisfaction in the story. I think we all just like to see like bad people get their comeuppance. Like these people have treated this poor girl so bad, like honestly, like death to them all. They kind of deserve it. Like at some point you're like, you know what, yeah, she's like killing people, but like she kind of deserves it, you know, like let her have this one thing, which sounds ridiculous, but I mean, it's so like satisfying to see, you know. And I enjoyed pretty much the beginning to the end, even the end. I know Stephen King gets a lot of flack for his endings, which I haven't read, obviously I haven't read any of his other books, but I liked this ending. And I know I'm specifically going to talk about the 70s Carrie adaptation, but I think a lot of people said how that ending's like much more satisfying, or it's better than like the book ending. I really enjoyed this ending, and I'll talk about that later. So as far as story goes, yeah, it's definitely like a really solid, good story, and it's easily like digestible. Typically for the writing part of a review, I don't really put that much emphasis on it. I am personally not big on writing. It's like not what I look for in a book. I'm not looking for like unique writing. I'm not looking for flowery prose. That's not something that I like. I've seen other reviews where they really emphasize the writing and the technique and all that kind of stuff. That's just like not my gig. And that's because like I've read books with like basic straightforward writing, and the story itself is just so amazing. I give it like 5 out of 5 stars. So I don't really emphasize writing so much. As long as I know what's happening and I can understand what the author's trying to say, then like I'm fine with the writing. This writing is really like readable and straightforward. And I was thinking, I remember I got a comment once in one of my videos, and someone asked, would this book be easy to read if English is not my first language? And absolutely, you know, going into a book that's a bit older, this was also written in the 70s, you'd imagine some kind of disconnect. You might not understand something, but other than like references and certain like little things, this could have taken place at any period. This could have taken place like last year, that kind of thing. It's also pretty good if you're like not a big reader, as far as like vocabulary and things like that goes. Like it's pretty, like a lot of people could probably pick this up if you've never read anything, or you're not a big reader, or you only read what is required of you in like school or whatever. So I'd imagine if you were new to like the horror genre, the thriller horror genre, this might be a really good place to start. It's like really easily readable in my opinion. Carrie was pretty much the character that you would expect if you've never seen the film or read the book. You would expect some shy, meek girl who's like afraid to come out of her shell, which is, you know, that's what you get with her. But I did mention in my earlier clips that like she did already kind of have some kind of violent tendencies, like imagery. So I really like seeing that, and I kind of wish that there were like more moments of that beforehand. And I did feel sorry for her like while reading the book, but it really like hit me as I was rewatching the film after I finished reading, that like it's really, really sad. Like when I was watching the film leading up to her like getting her crown with the flowers and all that, I was just like waiting for, you know, shit to hit the fan. And I was so, obviously I was anticipating like the really cool like death scene or whatever, but it was also like really sad because I didn't want this like happy moment for Carrie to end. Like her entire life she's been like absolutely dragged through the mud by like the people that should care about her, and it sucks like the one night that she has to herself, which was a really good night because her prom day was actually being really nice to her, telling her she was beautiful, like asking her to dance, and he was like pretty much a gentleman to her, and like it was like torn from her hands and she like snapped. It must have like been so hard growing up with that mother who was like this fanatical fundamentalist Christian woman. Like if she was like a normal girl without her telekinetic abilities, like the amount of like therapy and like deconstructing that she would have to go through is like insane. She probably would have never had like a happy life, unfortunately. The character that definitely did surprise me the most was Sue. I just thought she was gonna be this pretty like one note girl, but she was pretty like self-aware of herself. Even at the very beginning, I mentioned this in one of the earlier clips, how she knows that she's like the pretty girl who's in like the student, like in a bunch of student activities. She's probably gonna marry her high school sweetheart, maybe not go to college. She's gonna be a housewife, picket fence, that whole thing, and she's already kind of like against that, but she doesn't really know how to work against that future that she probably already has for herself. And I found that really interesting that King could write such a really well nuanced teenage girl, when I think a lot of people, even women themselves, have like issues writing teen girls, much less men. So yeah, she was definitely well realized, and I really liked her. I don't remember watching the earliest Carrie adaptation. I know I did watch it, the one with like Chloe Grace Moretz, but I do remember that one being a little more Sue focused, and the film, the original film, wasn't as much. Sue's like a really good anchor for the story. Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing anything from her when we did get some kind of perspective from her. Throughout the book, we get excerpts from Sue's book that she wrote after the fact. What I really liked about her perspective was that she kind of remembered that these people are human. Even Chris, who's the girl behind the pig's blood incident, like, yeah, she was a cruel teenager and she's by no means like innocent of it all, but at the end of the day, she was like this teen girl who let her emotions get the better of her. It's not an excuse, but like Sue still remembers like her friend, you know. Sue still remembers the kind of boy Tommy was and how kind he was. And then we get to Chris, who is the girl behind the whole like pig's blood incident, which it's weird because in one breath I talk about how Sue is so realized as a young teen girl, but Chris was really weird. She was really manic sometimes. Like she almost read like 25, 30-year-old woman as opposed to like a teen girl. Some of the things that she says and her decisions, it does feel like there's a man behind the pen, which there is. It sucks because King did so well writing Sue. Yeah, some of the things that she says, I'm thinking like, why would she be that type of girl? I just fully don't really understand Chris because she was so all over the place with her character. It's funny because I'm looking at my notes and I have no section for Carrie's mother, who's also a really important character, Margaret. Her name's Margaret, right? I think it's Margaret. I didn't write anything for her, but like anything that you can think of as far as like super fundamentalist Christian, like that's that woman. Like, and like turn it up a few notches, that's her. And it sucks because you want to hate her, but Carrie cares so much about her mother. Like she swings between hating her mother and loving her and like wanting to be with her. And even Carrie's last words are, "Mommy, I'm sorry, where?" And then it cuts off there. So like this relationship that Margaret festered with her daughter, it's so insane. I was like incredibly tense reading like any scene Margaret had. And then for Chris's boyfriend, who I don't remember his name, but the guy who got the pig's blood for the prom night, I just wrote down electric chair, so that's how I feel about him. I'm looking through my book because at this point this is typically where I like bring up like other tidbits of the story that kind of stuck out at me but don't necessarily fit under like storytelling, writing, or characters. I mentioned how women's bodies are discussed a lot, like in just like a descriptive matter. There really was no reason for me to know certain details about pubic areas and all this kind of stuff when it wasn't really relevant. It's just weird at this point. I mentioned in a clip how Stephen King compares Carrie looking like a minstrel, which is a weird thing to say. It's just weird. Like at best it's just like a really weird thing. Like why not like deer in the headlights or something? So at best it's just really weird. Like when an uncle is like ranting and going on about something or other and you're like, is this gonna end up racist? And then he says something, you're like, ugh, like I don't know where we land on that. And at worst, like this might play into a discussion on race and the Black experience that I'm personally not well equipped, or I'm not one to speak on. But yeah, it was just weird. Also, I forgot to mention, he uses that comparison twice. Like, that's, not only was it weird, now it's like really weird. In the first instance I talk about how he says when Carrie gets blood on her face that she looks like a minstrel, and then there's another scene where a woman like walks out of her home and she's wearing like a robe, her hair's in curlers, and she has like a mud mask on, and then he says again she looks like a blackface actor, which is, again, like, why specifically use that? Like, why specifically use that imagery? Like, I don't get it. Like, it's just weird. There's something about the writing that I forgot to mention that might bother people, but there are some moments where Stephen King likes to write characters' thoughts in these like brackets. I don't know why he chose to show it off in that way, but that's how it looks like in mine. So sometimes they're really like clear thoughts, like I shouldn't be doing this or something along those lines, and then sometimes they're like really weird thoughts that kind of come out of nowhere, like talking about, you know, I think it'll be like Carrie walking around in school or something, and then her thoughts are about like Jesus or something. It's a little different. I don't think people really see that a lot, and it does kind of break up like paragraphs almost, so it might ruin the flow of certain scenes, which I thought should be noted. And before I end this video, let me talk about the actual ending of the book. I low-key kind of liked it. I guess like the biggest thing is that it doesn't really end with Carrie, and so after we get like Carrie's final scene in this book, we have a few more instances of like people discussing the event, what happened, going forward, that kind of stuff, as regarding like people with telekinesis. Like, was this a real event where people just like crazy or whatever, were people saying things, was Carrie actually like doing these things with her mind? So of course I'd rather have the story ended like with Carrie, like she was in the last scene. That's all I really care about, especially by the end. You do really care about Carrie, or at least I did, so I wanted to end with her. And a scene that I really love that we don't get in the original Carrie film, again, that's just the one that I'm going to reference a lot, we kind of get a hint of it. So yeah, there's a scene at the end where Carrie and Sue come across each other, and this is after Carrie's like big snap. She hurts a lot of people. There's this great scene between Sue and Carrie that really showed Carrie that Sue was not like the other girls or her other classmates. She generally tried to be a good person to Carrie after the fact. After Sue participated in that bullying scene at the very beginning, Sue genuinely felt really bad about how she treated Carrie and how she never like stuck up for her in the past, and she tried to like give something good to Carrie, and she has like no ill will towards the girl. And the fact that Carrie got to see that at least once, that someone cared about her, it like completely broke my heart. Like, I live for these like girl moments, and this is probably like really spoilery. This is like spoils like the one of the last moments in the book, so I guess if you want to see, I mean the whole video is supposed to be spoilery. So the last scene that we have of Carrie is her dying after she like destroys her town, destroys prom and all that kind of stuff, and as she's dying, she's essentially sharing this like mental bridge with Sue. But it made me really sad and almost happy that at least Carrie knew that in her last moment she had at least one person that truly cared about her. And so yeah, it was a little bittersweet. Anyways, it's like my favorite scene in the book, I think, and it makes me sad that not a lot of people know it, because I'm pretty sure most people just know the film, don't really know the book. Though I will say, if you really like the film, the last scene with Carrie and her mother is also kind of underwhelming in the book. It kind of just happens really quick, and then Carrie moves on. I thought there would be a lot more, like, I guess just more to the scene with Carrie and her mother and that last scene that they had together. So yeah, that part was a little underwhelming, I would say. Those are my thoughts on Carrie. It was a really solid book with some issues, like I expected there to be, but I was really surprised about how much I connected to a lot of the characters and the story itself. if you've already seen any of the films, I'd still recommend reading the book. There's something really fun about reading like the source material for like an already iconic story that most of us like have a general knowledge of. Of course, like most of us try to like read the book before the movie, but for something like Carrie that everyone kind of knows the beats in that story, getting all this like background and all this detail is actually really fun. So as far as like going forward, Stephen King, I guess it's downhill from here, because the way some of you King fans rip his newer stuff, I can't wait to be disappointed. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any thoughts on what I've said. I'd like to have a conversation in the comments. That's fun for me. All my social medias will be linked down below, as well as some far more important links. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.